planning board, Monday, February 24th. Council, has adequate notice of this meeting been sent to the papers?
Yes.
Okay. Would you please rise for the salute the flag? I pledge allegiance to the flag
of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
And read the call roll, please.
Mrs. Kelly? Here. Councilman Bartholomew?
Here.
Mayor Delaney?
Here.
Mr. Parkins?
Here.
Mr. Christensen?
Here.
And Chairman O'Connor.
Here. I know we have a few members of the board, I'm sure members of the public aren't feeling well, so you have to bear with our voices, I apologize. We're starting this evening with the hearing regarding the Borough of Edgewater Master Plan Periodic Examination Report. Catherine, can you give us a brief explanation why we're here? I know there's been people questioning.
Yes, we're here tonight to discuss the 2014 Master Plan reexamination. It is timely because a couple of reasons. The first of which would be towards the end of last year, we received a letter from the superintendent of schools talking about the increase in enrollment and how the enrollment has actually surpassed the projections for the George Washington School. So that sort of set off the red flag. Number two, also, we do understand that the Hess property will be sold at some point in the future, in the near future, compared to 2 years ago when we thought that the Hess property was not going to ever be sold. So again, we need to really take a look at that. So this reexamination recommends that as a redevelopment area. And those two are sort of combined because it looks like it will be a perfect opportunity to take a look at that redevelopment area and potentially help the school system through I guess, closer analyzation of that area and how we can potentially help the school and actually potentially the efficiencies in recreation within the borough, because that was identified in the last facilities element as well. And lastly, it was also a desire of the council to have the examination be in concert with the zoning that was passed. As you all know, we did a land use element back in 2012 when we did the community facilities element, and the planning board had recommended the MXD1 and MXD2 zones, and then the council felt that there should be a third MXD zone, so there was an MXD3 zone that was incorporated into the zoning. So at this time, what we're doing is we're trying to tighten everything up, bringing that into this document so that our master plan documents also reflect what our zoning ordinance reads. So those would be probably the, I guess that's the sort of global overview of the purpose of the reexamination.
Okay. Thank you. Councilor?
No, there were certain block and lot references that were changed. But,
Yeah, so at the time of the last land use element, one of the I guess issues that the public brought out was the fact that we did not include actual addresses in our block and lot list. So we also incorporated that into this re-examination so that everyone knows exactly where those properties are. And it wasn't because we weren't trying to have everyone know where the properties were. It's just that legally, usually the block and lot is the legal list when you're talking about a zoning. But here we have made the public aware of where those properties are based on the street addresses.
You want to start then?
Yeah, sure. A re-examination is required to be prepared at least once every 10 years. Our last one was in 2010, so that was 4 years ago. But as you know, things, we're sort of living in a dynamic society and things really do change. Back in 2010, we were really kind of feeling the lag of the 2008 economic recession. And as far as I can tell, I think that everyone will probably be in agreement. Our economy is on more of an upswing. We've obviously had quite a few development applications that have come before the boards, both boards, the planning board, and zoning board. And for the reasons I already stated, it was very timely for us to take another look at a re-examination. As part of a re-examination, there's 5 parts that we need to address that are outlined in the municipal land use law, letter A through E. Letter A, we need to identify the main problems and objectives relating to land development in the municipality at the time of the adoption of the last re-examination report. And then B, we have to identify the extent to which such problems and objectives have been reduced or increased subsequent to such date. Letter C, we have to talk about the extent to which there have been significant changes in the assumptions, policies, and objectives forming the basis of the master plan and development regulations. And then D would be the the specific changes recommended following suit to the extent that there have been changes. And then lastly, E is recommendations for redevelopment plans. With that said, under A, the major policy objectives relating to land development in the municipality at the time of the 2010 master plan reexamination, periodic reexamination report. The first issue identified was demographic analysis. It was noted obviously in 2010 that the census data was going to be coming out, so we should do a demographic analysis. Number 2, it also recommended community facilities element. Number 3, we talked about docks. One of the issues at the time was that docks were not really defined or specifically permitted anywhere in the borough, so that was an issue. Then also, number 4 was Shady Side North. It talked about the general character of Shady Side North and what the intent of that area was. Number 5 was sustainability, recommendation of sustainability element. Number 6, the Unilever property. It had not actually been designated at that time on the zoning map, and so that was a concern. Number 7 is steep slope protection. There was recommendations about steep slope regulations, whether or not they were applicable to single and two-family homes. Number 8 was the size and scale of single and two-family residential development. There was sort of an issue with bulk regulations and height regulations, and whether or not we should take a closer look at the single and two-family residential development. Number 9 was the intensity of residential development at the colony. The current zoning doesn't reflect the actual density of the colony, so we needed to tighten that up. Number 10 was parking in residential areas. We know that this is a concern, it's an ongoing concern. And number 11 was the waterfront walkway. So with regard to the extent to which these issues have changed or such problems have changed, a demographic analysis, number 1, has been completed and actually is included as well in this reexamination. Number 2, the community facilities element has also been completed in 2012. The difference that I would talk about with the community facilities element is at the time when we did the analysis, we thought that the school system was okay. And now that we have this letter from the superintendent of schools, we realize that it's not. Seeing as they have exceeded their projections for enrollment. We need to obviously go back and take a closer look at that. And as my understanding is that there is a consulting firm that is going to be doing revised projections based on the development that has been approved in the borough. Once we get that data, we'll be able to incorporate that at a future date into probably an amendment to the community facilities element. Number 3, docks, the recommendations from the last re-exam remain valid to identify where they should be permitted and provide definitions of them. Number 4, Shady Side North. The prior concerns are really no longer valid as a use variance was approved in 2010 for this area. And I'll talk about that in a little bit. Number 5, sustainability. A recommendation for sustainability element still remains valid. Number 6, Unilever property. The property has been designated in the zoning ordinance and as the Southwest, as the SWRD district, the Southwest Redevelopment District. So that is no longer a concern. Number 7, steep slope protection. Regarding that, ordinance number 1452-2011 was adopted and addressed the concerns of steep slope protection. That basically states that you can't disturb anything over 20%. And it doesn't matter if it's single family or not single family or whatever. And that goes back into a lot of our pre-neighbor funding and our Rossi list. And so we needed to actually adopt that ordinance so we'd be in conformity with the pre-neighbors grants that we received in the past. Number 8, size and scale of single two-family development. This does still remain a concern. Dan, I can attest to this. We kind of wrestle with applications every day. That needs to be looked at a little bit closer than in the context of a reexamination, so that still remains valid. Number 9, the intensity of residential development in the colony still remains a concern. Number 10, parking in single two-family residential areas. Obviously, that's also still a concern. That probably relates also to the size and scale of residential development in single and two-family areas. And number 11, the recommendations for the walkway still remain valid. Recommendations to work with the county on maintenance and security issues. issues. We know that this is sort of an ongoing problem. We don't have a wonderful solution to it. So I think it's just going to be a constant, something that we're going to have to keep working on going into the future. So under section C, to the extent to which there have been significant changes in the assumptions, policies, and objectives forming the basis for the master plan, there have been several ordinances passed since the last reexamination, which I reviewed in the reexamination. We have also included an analysis of the use and bulk variances in the reexamination, which does result in significant changes to the objectives forming development regulations. What we found even in our last land use element was that the majority of the use variances were for mixed use or residential projects, and they were granted in the B4 or the RR1 zones. And those do not permit those types of uses. They don't permit retail, hotel, or residential. So we found that really some of the zones were just dead zones. And also that the FAR floor area ratios exceeded what was permitted in some of the zones. And then some of the zones didn't even have an FAR. So we really needed to sort of catch up and realize that we did need to institute a floor area ratio for many of the zones. There were some changes at the state level. Regarding the residential site improvement standards, there were just some technical engineering changes. And then lastly, as we all know about COA, we know that supposedly we're getting revised rules soon. I've been requesting information on when, and I haven't gotten any information to date. But at which time the rules do come out, obviously the borough is going to need to adopt another housing element at that time. And so under section D, the specific changes recommended for the master plan or development regulations, if any. Basically what we're doing here is we're reaffirming the recommendations that were contained in the last land use element. But with that, what we're doing is we're also reaffirming the zoning ordinance that was passed by the council, rezoning the southern portion of Edgewater, because as I stated earlier, we're adding the MXD3 zone to the re-exam. Again, we're tightening things up. We're making sure that all our documents are in concert with one another. So that's the major recommendation of this re-examination, is to include the MXD3 zone and reaffirm the zoning and the recommendations of the land use element. And lastly, section E, that's when we're talking about redevelopment plans. The update on the Unilever property, or otherwise known as High Park, is they had requested a modification to the redevelopment plan. That included an inclusion of hotels, which were not formally permitted. Also, elimination of approximately 15,000 square feet of commercial space, and then the addition of 100 residential units. So there's a little massaging of the redevelopment plan, and that is under review by the council. I understand that they have a first reading. And this was prepared before that, so that does not reflect in this document at this time.
And every board member received a letter tonight from the Borough Clerk about the first reading. And the second reading will be on April 24th, 7 p.m. That's what Ms. Pearl.
Correct. And then lastly, in terms of future redevelopment, we talked about the Hess property. We are recommending that the Hess property be part of a separate and distinct redevelopment plan at a close time in the future, where we really need to look at that. The area has a total area of over 19 acres, so it's a fairly large size, especially in the Edgewater community. So I think that careful analysis is really going to have to be done at that site, and we're going to need to work with the school board, the Board of Education, coming up in the future to sort of address the problems, like I stated before, in terms of projected enrollment. And in terms of the objectives, from 2010 to 2014, a couple of the objectives contained within the plan were eliminated because they were either no longer valid or they were already addressed. In 2010, we eliminated number 11, and that regarded the Shady Side area. But as we stated earlier, that was subject to a use variance application approved in 2010, so this objective no longer remains valid. We've also eliminated number 13, which says, to require new development applications which exceed 50 dwelling units and are 25,000 square feet of non-residential square footage to submit a traffic study. That's actually has been required as part of our zoning ordinance, so it no longer needs to remain an objective, because it's now, incorporated into our zoning ordinance under section 24109. Just as well, we eliminated number 15, which talks about requiring all residential developments in excess of 20 dwelling units to submit a socioeconomic impact study, again, as part of our ordinance under section 24108. And number 19, which talks about the preparation of a community facilities plan element, which has been completed. So those were the ones that were eliminated, and we incorporated two new ones. One would be to promote the establishment of a walkable community by encouraging mixed uses in appropriate locations and streetscape design to accommodate pedestrians. And number 12, to promote shared access, both vehicular and pedestrian, as well as shared parking between different property owners to eliminate unnecessary trips on the road's main thoroughfares. So I think that's sort of a succinct description of our reexamination. So I welcome any questions at this time.
Anybody from the board?
Yes.
Concerning the school board,
Yes.
have you met with them yet? I know in the past you have met the former superintendent.
No, I have not. I have not met with them yet. But that, at which point they actually have a consultant do the study, that's when it's going to be really appropriate to me. We understand that there is an issue going forward, but until we have more data, I think that we need to meet then, and then we can really assess what the needs are, and that will roll into a redevelopment plan for this area.
And the last thing you spoke about the shared parking, access, stuff like that. What do you mean?
That means that parking lots would be connected rather than separated, so that it eliminates unnecessary trips onto River Road and any other major thoroughfares. I mean, River Road is basically a major thoroughfare, but
It doesn't mean they're counting. In the past, people took that as meaning they were going to be counting the spaces twice. No.
No,
Everybody's not
no,
gonna-
no, it's just talking about, connections. Yeah, that's what that.
Anybody else from the board? No, to the public? Come on, please. State your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
Good evening, Chair. I'm Chris Dick, this is Gil on behalf of the Zephyr.
Spell your last name, please.
DIKTAS 596 Anderson Avenue, the Zephyr business address.
Thank you, sir.
Two issues. On behalf of Borough Zephyr, we want to thank the planning board for addressing the MDX3 classification, which was MXD2. You're cutting the story height from 114. I'm sorry, you're cutting the story height from 114 stories, 150 feet, to 9 stories, 110. So thank you for taking that into consideration for the borough. Secondly, this is to your planner. I heard you indicate on your steep slope regulations and your redevelopment definition. Does that coincide with the language that's been mandated by the BCUA to all the sister municipalities of Bergen, or is that independent language that's proposed by you for the benefit of the borough?
I'm a little confused by the question.
All right.
Are you talking about steep slopes, or are you talking about redevelopment?
There's two issues.
Okay.
Okay, the BCUA, Bergen County Utilities Authority, has propounded proposed ordinance changes to all the municipalities of Bergen. Two major components of the changes are steep slope and redevelopment. So my question to you is both are the same question for the two issues. The steep slope or the redevelopment ordinance that you're proposing, are those definitions equal to or similar or identical to the BCUA proposals, or are they your concepts as a planner to the borough?
Yeah, well, I'll take that in two parts. The ordinance that was adopted for steep slopes was in 2011.
So that answers my question. So
So
it's not the
that's-
BCUA.
Correct. So that predates that. And the second part of the question is, we haven't actually done a redevelopment study for the Hess property.
It's not the study, it's a definition of redevelopment. It's completely different.
Okay.
So to the 190 River Road, I live in town. So as a resident, just please check into the issues as to the steep slope developmental regulations and the definition of redevelopment,
Okay.
because that affects the municipality differently than your proposal. Thank you.
Thank you. Next person. Sir? State your name, spell your last name and address, please.
Paul Elias, Elias, and I'm here on behalf of Kathy Krikovic. Would you like her address or mine? My office or
Both yours.
12 Route 17 North, Suite 320, Paramus, 07652. 8814 Churchill Road, Edgewater. Oh, I'm sorry, North Bergen.
You're a counsel, legal counsel?
I'm an attorney. Yes.
Okay.
I also have a planner who provide expert testimony after I question Ms. Gregory.
Okay.
Ms. Gregory, I have a few questions and I'll just jump right in. Are there any developments or buildings in Edgewater that have at least a density of at least 100 units per acre?
Off the top of my head, I don't recall exactly which one.
Do you know if there are?
I believe so. I need to check.
Do you know approximately how many?
No.
Do you know if there's any with at least 90?
Yes.
Do you know which ones or
Not off
how
the top
many?
of my head, no.
Same question, 80 or 70?
I don't know specifically. I have.
Okay, so you specifically don't know if there's any developments and the density of those developments?
No, I know that there are. I don't know which ones are.
Well, I guess the question is directed to the fact that in your report, it states that this is supposed to conform to the character of the community, right?
Yes.
Okay, so these redevelopment areas, they're gonna have greater than 100 units per acre, correct? The R5 zones?
Well, those are not redevelopment areas.
I'm sorry, as part of the plan, the rezoning areas.
Yes.
Okay, so I'm just trying to see, I'm trying to determine what the existing character of the community is. So if there's any that have 100, if so, how many, 90, 80, 70, or so on? Do we have that information?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay.
Counselor, if I may, was the purpose to direct a question and have it answered, or is this going to be just, an endless number of questions? I don't think this is the forum for that.
Well, I'm respectfully, I've just asked, I think, 3 questions, and I'm genuinely looking for an
Because
answer.
she did respond and say that off the top of her head, she doesn't have the answer to some of these very specific questions.
Okay.
These are things that she could possibly provide for you.
Maybe that's
But I
something we
think
should
that-
follow up on?
Okay.
Yeah, I can certainly provide it, and I do have the data, but off the top of my head, I don't have every density of every building memorized in the entire borough of Edgewater.
Okay, okay. Do you know what the highest, what the height limitation is going to be under your plan?
We have, well, right now, we have a height of 150 feet, or, I'm sorry, 220 feet.
Okay, and that, is that 20 stories?
Yes.
Okay, but is that the highest building that can be under the plan? Because as I read it, it can go higher, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so do you know, have you determined what the highest potential building could be?
No.
Okay. Do you know what the maximum number of units? So if your plan is adopted, do we know how many additional units could be built in Edgewater as a result?
We can provide an estimate, yes, but we'll never know exactly how many.
Sure.
Units.
Well, do we have an upper limit?
I do not provide an estimate.
Okay. Have you done any type of analysis?
No.
Okay. Do you have any estimate or any rough idea?
I can also provide that information as well.
Okay. So we don't have it though at this time. We just want to make sure, not to badger.
Correct.
Okay. Have you performed?
Counsel, we normally have a 5-minute limitation.
Oh,
This is-
oh.
again,
He's just a counsel.
I'm just reminding the gentleman.
Not here.
No, we don't have 5 minutes.
I will be as brief as I can, but I do have a list of questions that I'd like
Not
to
at the
cover.
planning board.
Okay. So,
council just reminded the gentleman of the 5-minute rule.
There is
A
one.
few
When-
people
when
come
did
and
you
said there
vote
isn't
on
a
the
5-minute
5-minute
rule.
rule?
There always has been
No, there
many years.
hasn't.
Not at the planning board here.
Yes, ma'am. Yes, ma'am.
Never.
Well, look, I think we're making this longer than it needs to be. I'll be as-
Just hold on, let me just finish with this. Please, no more further outbursts from the public. Thank you very much.
I'll try to be as brief as I can. Have you performed a traffic study?
No,
Okay. Why not?
it's not required.
Why not?
It's not required.
Okay. Potentially, under your plan, we can have a large increase in units in the town, correct?
Yes,
Would that impact traffic?
probably.
Okay. But the study is not required?
Nope.
Okay. Have you performed a view shed analysis?
No,
Same answer, why not?
it's not required for the
Okay.
examination. It's required as part of our zoning ordinance.
Okay. Have you performed an analysis on the effect of this plan on the school system?
Yes, we did.
Okay. So, and what is the benefit of that analysis?
Well, this was discussed as part of our last land use element. One of the reasons for providing high-rise housing is that it produces less school children. And we have empirical data provided to us from the School Board of Education that shows that from specific developments in Edgewater. All of the developments that are 5 stories and less produce twice as many school children as high-rise developments.
Do we have like children per unit? Is there a ratio?
The ratio, the average for 5 stories below was, as I recall, approximately 1 per 10 units, and for the high rise, it was 1 per 20 units.
Okay, so half, right? Okay. So under your plan though, we can have developments that have 100 units per acre, correct?
Yes.
Do you have any idea how many acres can be developed on that 100 units per acre density?
Not off the top of my head, no.
Okay, let's say 2,000 or 3,000, is that possible? 2,000 or 3,000 units?
It could be.
Okay, would 4,000 be possible?
I don't know.
Okay. But even at, let's look at 2,000 or 3,000. Even at 1 child per 20 units, we still have a significant increase to the number of students in the school system, correct?
No, not necessarily.
Please share.
The higher we go with the building, the
Okay.
less kids you're gonna have in the
So,
building.
so we're at 1 per 20. Is there a ratio if we go to 25 stories? Do you have that information?
Not from Edgewater, no.
Okay. I guess the concern is that you did previously state that the school's already at capacity, correct?
Yes.
Okay, so if we have 2,000 or 3,000 or 4,000 additional units, we are going to have a number of kids entering into the school system, correct?
Yes.
Where are we going to put those kids?
That's why we're discussing a redevelopment plan for the Hess area.
Okay, now isn't that area though contaminated?
I'm assuming yes it is.
Okay, have you done any analysis on the contamination?
No,
Well, how do you know you can put a school there?
I didn't say we put a school there.
Okay, so what we do know right now is the Hess site's contaminated. We're gonna have more students going into the school.
She assumed that there was contamination there. She did not say that it was contaminated.
Okay, but you can't say that it's not.
Correct.
So you have no idea if you could put a school there?
No.
Okay. So we can't say that that is a solution to the problem.
Yes, we can.
All right. Let's back me up a little bit, and I'm sorry if I'm taking a little bit out, but I'm not following you. The Hess site may be contaminated.
Yes.
The school is at capacity.
Yes.
We're gonna have more kids as a result of the rezoning.
Yes.
We don't know we can build a school at the Hess site.
Yes.
How could we know that that's a solution?
Because we would enter negotiations with the developer of the site to potentially add on to another school or provide something somewhere else. They never said it would be on that site.
Have you explored that? Do we have any type of analysis on where another school could be?
No, it's premature at this time because we have no data on future enrollments and we don't have a developer of the Hess site.
But with 3,000 or 4,000 potential units and the kids that could come as a result of those units, couldn't you find yourself in a position where you have all these additional kids and nowhere to put them?
Well, actually, when we say that the school's at capacity, one of the other nuances to it is that it includes pre-kindergarten, which would probably be eliminated in some of the special services. So there would be some growing pains with the school, but that's going to be in any community. There will be some growing pains with the school. But I don't anticipate that any of these developments are going to shoot up and have 1 million kids in them. We're not going to.
Well, I don't think, well, no one's speaking of 1 million, we're speaking of even 1 over 20 times 2, 3, or 4,000 units, which I'm not doing the math on top of my head, but I think would be a couple hundred kids, right?
Potentially it could be.
Okay, so then the solution may be to get rid of pre-kindergarten, if we can't build on the Hess site.
That's what the school has done in the past.
Okay.
Well,
Is that enough if we have 200 or 300 kids?
I'm sure that it's not.
Okay, so then there could be a very serious potential problem.
We already know that there's an issue.
But
We conceded that there's an issue.
no, the issue is whether this would exacerbate that issue, or, well, yeah, whether it would make it worse.
We don't believe that it would. But that's why we are proposing more high-rise housing than mid-rise housing.
Right, but, I mean, if, just,
Council-
okay, all
Council-
right, I have a couple, I'm gonna move on, I think I
Council-
made my point.
Yeah, no, Councilman, actually, what you kept saying about highway, she was gonna build on the hash, you never said that. I mean, you have a question, answer the question.
Yeah.
Okay?
Okay, well, I'm just following up here because it just seems like a very important issue.
We've been very
Okay.
generous with the time. You
All right.
asked about 20 questions already.
Which were all around the same thing, and you never got to the point.
Yeah.
But-
What's your point?
The community is interested in hearing the answers.
That's fine.
So let them ask the questions.
So
Everyone has an opportunity
So
to
you
come
open
up
up
and
to
ask a
and
question.
ask a question when you come up, okay, sir?
What's this?
When we open to the public, which we are now, when he's done, you can come up and say that also.
Exactly.
Please.
I'll ask a bunch of
We
questions.
can't have one
That's fine.
individual taking up all
But
the
the problem
time.
is,
I have-
It's supposed to be open to
Counselor,
the
just-
public.
my point is, you're asking a question.
Yes, everyone else
So
has to
one
have
thing
the
that you said
opportunity to ask
3 different
questions.
They'll be paid.
The public is benefiting from his questions.
That's what I'm saying.
No, what
Okay.
she said is the Hess is a solution.
It's one of the solutions.
Right, and I just wanted to make sure that we understood that that solution is very precarious at this point.
Okay.
Okay, and that was the point, and the only reason I'm asking a number of questions, and this is just being a little misdirecting in her answer. And I just wanted to make sure that I completely understood her position, that's all, and I do. And so now I'll move on to my next question. How does,
Let me ask.
I have a couple more questions. How does the new proposed plan reexamination differ from the 2012 version that resulted in ordinance number 1485?
There wasn't a 2012 examination.
Was there a previous plan, I'm sorry, a previous plan, a proposed plan?
Talking about the land use element.
Sure. It resulted in ordinance 1485. How is this one different?
I just discussed that to a fairly well in my presentation, so I'm not about to go over the whole thing again. I explained that we added the MXD3. I explained that we're here to recommend a redevelopment plan for the Hess area. I explained the fact that we did receive a letter from the school perspective, and I explained exactly what the changes to the objectives were. So I don't know what else you're looking for.
Okay, and so that's a summary of the differences between this proposed plan and the one that resulted in ordinance 1485.
Well, also the fact that this has different criteria because this is a reexamination, that was a land use element, and I went through the municipal land use law sections, the A through E. We need to address those specifically versus the land use element, which is sort of a little different than this, because it doesn't, the land use element doesn't have specific criteria outlined in the municipal land use law to address, other than obviously land use objectives for the future and land use.
Okay. I'll be, in my last question, we'd like just a couple minutes for our expert to provide some testimony. What triggered this reexamination, this proposed plan?
I also thought I mentioned that as well. Receiving the letter back in September of 2013 from the school district. It's very well known that the Hess property is going to be bought by a potential developer. I myself have gotten phone calls from attorneys, and the desire of the council to have all of our documents coincide with one another, because the council, after the land use element last night, as I explained earlier, adopted the MXD3 zone as part of the zoning ordinance, which was not a recommendation of the land use element. So what we're doing here is we're incorporating it into our examination so that all our documents fit together.
Okay. So, I just,
Thank you very much. You said that would be your last question,
Yes.
correct?
well,
Thank you.
that's fine. I'll leave it to my planner. His, office and
We'll be happy to hear from the plan.
Come on. State your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
Joseph Burgess, B-U-R-G-I-S, office at 25 Westwood Avenue in Westwood. If I may suggest, because there's an order that is typically followed, why don't we let the public finish with Mr. Gregory, and then I'll give my presentation.
Mr. Gregory, you fine with that? I'm fine with that.
That is not
It's part of the council. Council said he wanted to come up. Okay, anybody else from the public? Sir? State your name, spell your last name and your address, please.
You got it.
Thank you very much.
Name is Eric Heacock, 1354 River Road,
Can you spell your last name, please?
Heacock. I've got a couple comments, and then I have some questions and some analysis that I've done separately, working with Gregory Associates data and census data, and I'd like to just reveal a few things that I've discovered. Comments, I have really 5 main comments here. Obviously, one that's been brought up is that our school systems are in real trouble. You guys know that. And it's a big concern. I have a 2.5-year-old daughter who I'd like to send to public school, but I'm not so sure I'm going to be able to because of the degradation that I'm fearing might happen because of overpopulation. So the second thing is the traffic will get worse. I don't care. You've got to be blind or completely just dumb to not realize that traffic's going to get worse. And it's not because of Fort Lee and because of Bergen County, West New York, and North Bergen. We contribute to our own traffic problems. If we don't think we do, because Phil Boja doesn't think that it's a big deal because if everybody else is doing it, then why not? We might as well just pile on and create our own traffic problems because everybody else is doing it anyway. So if you don't think that's going to happen, you're fooling yourselves. The third thing is that the master plan itself has absolutely no vision left. It was created in 1990, and at the time it made sense. We continue to re-examine it over and over again. Re-examinations happen now every, couple of years because it's no longer working. A plan, by definition, is something about the future. A plan, by the definition of Gregory Associates, is about a retroactive analysis in order to get the plan to conform to what's already happened. And that fundamentally just does not make sense. Look up the word plan in the dictionary. All right, this is a retroactive analysis. It's said that several times in the plan. So we need to consider that, the fact that we don't have vision in the master plan anymore. The master plan is also way too high level. It talks about grandiose statements of waterfront features, et cetera, but it has no direction to give to the zoning board or the town council to really sink teeth into the developers and say, if you're going to develop an ours community, you have to do certain things. And it's not just some, well, you need to provide a traffic study only if you meet certain criteria. Or, you really ought to help us put in a museum or another public library. Why do we need a public library in 2014? Those are the kind of things that a developer is going to give to us. They don't help us. The other thing is that the master plan and what's happening now with all the plan examinations are not a product of the community's input. And that is your problem. You have not reached out to the community, and by just simply announcing that meetings are happening or working through 702.com or whatever you guys do to do this, you're not actually reaching out to the community. I mean, I work all day, every day in the city. I work long hours. I travel internationally. You expect me to come in here all the time and learn your process and learn how you guys interact with one another and go to the town council and be told to come here and then now go to the board adjustment to try to find answers. That is a flaw that you guys must fix. You've got to reach out to the community. These plans can only be developed in an effective way with community outreach and community input. And you've failed to do that for the last several years. And it's now important more than ever. So with that, overcrowded schools and inadequate facilities. No debate there. We all know we're in deep, you know what. So I did a quick little analysis. Oh, I want to bring up one thing, and everybody keeps on saying this, and so I'll bring it up again. Phil Boja says that you guys are parroting it back. The Gregory Associates is saying that, even the Urban Land Institute had a study in 2005 that high-rise statistically doesn't bring children, or as many children as single family, okay? So that may make sense on a national basis, but does it make sense in the most densely populated area in the United States? I don't think so. We don't have a choice. We have to live in dense locations. We can't build single-family residences anymore, certainly not in Edgewater. And if you want to move to the burbs, fine, you can find places for that, but not here. So if you were to simply look at the data that was presented, it's census data, it's clear. And the structure, and the units and structure, census data from 90 to 2000 and 2010, low-density units increased by only 199 in that 20-year period. Medium-density units, 3 to 19, increased by 208 in that 20-year period. High-density units, and this includes not necessarily high-rises, but just units like the Alexander or whatever else is being developed, anything over the 20-plus units, they've increased by 1,700. 80% of the units developed in the last 20 years are coming from high-density development. And she cannot deny that there could possibly be some correlation with high-density development and school overpopulation, because that's the only way this town has been growing in the last 20 years. We aren't adding single-family dwellings. We're just not doing it. It's only max high-density stuff. Whether it's high-rise or mid-rise, it's still high-density. If you don't think that's happening, you're blind. You're blind. The data is clear. And I can fight I can argue the other point, just like she can fight the point that it's, oh, well, high-density really doesn't bring that many school children. The point is we have so much volume in the high-density market that we are absolutely going to bring more school children into this area. Even one more, even two more, we're already at capacity. Whether it's low density or high density, we're increasing that. And with the rezoning, you're going to allow thousands, potentially thousands of more units. And I know that the development hasn't happened yet, et cetera. The potential is there, and that is a major concern. And we have no future vision about how we actually might solve that. So reacting to that, I think there's a flaw in the analysis if you actually look at statistics in this town. So the other piece, traffic's going to get worse. As I said, you're blind if you don't think traffic's going to get worse. If we're going to add a couple thousand units, did you know in 2004 that 63% of the people in this town said they drove to work, the homeowners in here? That's a statistic I pulled out in a public forum. Now you could argue, well, maybe that's lower today. Well, let's say it's just 50%. 50% of the people that are going to buy units in these new rezoned areas are going to want to drive to work. Call it 500, 1,000, 2,000 more cars in this town. And it's people, I just drove down River Road from the north end, as you know. And I came down and everybody was coming back into town to come back to their apartments or their condos or their homes. People are coming back in the community. If you add a lot more cars, that's just going to get worse. That's our problem. That's not Fort Lee, that's not North Bergen, it's us. Because we are adding the units. And if you don't think that there's some piece of that. And the other thing is too, is that if we're so myopic to think that the traffic conditions are going to be okay because of our public transportation system, you've got to be fooling yourselves again. Where in the Gregory Associates plan have we actually said that we've gone out and done research to find out whether New Jersey Transit could add more buses to the town? Do we add more shuttles? Can we do an in-town fare? What about our taxi services? Our taxi services are late. I mean, it costs me $15 to get from Port Imperial to my house. It's a flat rate. I don't have good taxi service. So if we're saying that, oh, well, traffic's getting worse in the public transportation because we're a transit-oriented city, that's not, we don't have good transit here. I mean, it's good, but it's not great. It's certainly not going to support all of the rezoned areas with high rises. We can't compare ourselves to Manhattan. I can get on a subway, I can get on a cab, I can get on a train, I can get on a bus, I can go all over the place in the city, and I can walk 1 block away and go to the grocery store if I have to. We're not configured that way. And so if we want to build like that and have developers build high density, we better make sure that everything else around them, and they need to help us get to that point. So and while I'm in the middle of this, I'm not against development. I'm actually in the real estate business. I'm not here locally, but I believe in development. But it's got to be done in a smart way, and it's got to be done in a very cognizant way, considering the community that development is impacting. There's got to be a solution. Right now, this is just, let's let it rip and see what happens later, because we'll hire her back and they'll come back in and then tell us how to fix it later, but then it'll be too late. Third thing, managing through variances is not the way to go. You guys, as I said, this is a retroactive analysis on conforming things to rezoning that's already happened. The problem is that all the power is down on the Board of Adjustment, and that is 2 bodies removed from the town council. They are ill-equipped because the master plan doesn't help them, because it's not forward-thinking. And so they're left alone to do all of their variances in isolation, and they never involve the community. Never. I've been here 5 years now, and I've never once heard about any of these variances. Never. And so that is allowing them to operate in complete isolation. And they don't have a vision, because we don't have a good master plan to operate within that vision. They just simply cannot do it. And it's a completely a reactive approach. Okay. One question I have, what's the SWRD zone?
Southwest Redevelopment District.
Okay, that's its own zone? That's it?
Yeah, it was part of the redevelopment plan.
But it's not zoned for our residential, commercial, or anything, it's just some random thing, we don't know what's gonna happen there yet?
You're here, you're in
You're
it.
here. The
I know where I know I'm in it, but is it,
The art park development, it's a separate redevelopment plan that was
but
adopted.
it doesn't have common zoning, because we have like a ton of zones, so it doesn't have any, what are the characteristics that it has to apply to or adhere to?
We can get your copy of the amendment.
Okay, so once again, I have no idea. This stuff's so hard to figure out. I spent 14 hours yesterday looking at all this stuff. As I said, the master plan is way too vague. It's way too vague, it's way too high level, and it's impossible to enforce. This board is probably not well equipped, and the zoning board is really not well equipped to handle the variances and how to deal with all this stuff. Because the master plan is inadequate. It's okay though. And the first one was developed in 1990. And we just keep on sort of polishing the rock. Well, maybe we should take a fresh look and actually reach out to the community and people like myself and others you probably have never, ever seen before, who I encourage to come. They're passionate about this town. We all live here, we're owner-occupied units, and you've never reached out to us. That's how master plans, effective, good, forward-thinking master plans get developed. I had a call and an email exchange over the weekend with the director, New Jersey director for the Regional Planning Association. And I looked at a lot of reports that those guys helped Bergen County put together. Park Ridge, little old Park Ridge on the border of New York. They've got a visioning statement. They've taken a look at their town, and that's not a town that's just all open for brand new development. It's an existing township. They have a vision of what they want their town to look like and how developers should behave in that. But they reached out to organizations that none of you guys, I understand, or this planning body has ever done. Did you reach out to the Regional Planning Association? It's a not-for-profit organization. It's focused on the tri-state region. It's obviously, they work with the Urban Land Institute, which is one of the foremost bodies in the U.S. to help communities plan and visioning sessions. My mother-in-law's in real estate. She has, for instance, a property in El Paso, Texas. They have a fairly large master plan. She can't develop 5 acres of commercial property without building a road for the city. That is the kind of thing that we should be doing with these new developers, or these developers that continue to buy and tell us what to do. We need to tell them what to do. It's got to stop. It's absolutely got to stop. You know what? And Davies is not going to hurt. All right? He's not going to hurt. Heller, none of those guys are going to be hurt. Really. We want to call it duck it up.
Thank you, Mr. Eaton.
No, I got one more. This is a public hearing. I have a right to speak.
Well, let me just, by the way, we're going to let you speak, but there really is a 5-minute rule.
There's not a 5-minute rule.
Sir.
Where in state laws are 5-minute rule here?
By the way, yes, there is a, let's not get too hard.
With all due
There
respect,
is a
I would
5-minute
ask
rule.
you,
What
listen,
I'm saying is, hold on, Counselor. What I'm saying is, we've allowed you to go longer. We're going to allow people. We have, normally in this
Get more
board,
lined up.
in this board,
we
we have,
encourage you to speak, but I ask you, please respect the chair.
we do have other people.
Okay.
We can go, sir.
Made all my points.
Thank you, Mr. Cobb. Next one, public, please. Mary, come on up. Thank you.
Mary Hogan, 606 on the Avenue, quite as elegant. Thank you for explaining that what we went through 2 years ago, that we all poured our hours and hours of work, was not a master plan. And although it went to the mayor and council and they passed ordinances supporting it, because I was wondering why these properties are again on this, but because you're saying that was not a master plan, this is now the master plan, right?
No, I didn't say that it wasn't a master plan. We did refer a land use element 2 years ago, and community facilities on it, and those are parts of the master plan.
Okay. But it went to the, what I didn't understand is all the time we've ever done master plans, comes to the planning board, they review it, they do all the things, it goes to mayor and council, they have so many days to put in the ordinances supporting what was decided by the planning board. They can do it or not do it, depending on whether the mayor and council agree or disagree with, you know, what the planning board is recommending. And then that's it, that's the master. Well, we went through that 2 years ago, and I thought that was what we were doing. But now we're back here again doing an actual master plan. Because I couldn't figure out why these properties are again here when they were on the last one. But now I understand. With your explanation, I understand. I have some specific questions. On this, we're changing, on this master plan, correct? We're changing, you're recommending changing the zoning on 51 pieces of property. 6 of them are going into the R3, which is the 1 and 2 family. 21 are going to the MDX, which is 5 stories. 8 are going into the MDX 3. I put that next because although they're numbered 1, 2, 3, actually 3 is the middle, is 8 stories. 4 are going into the MXD2, which is 14 stories. 10 are going into the R5, which is the high rise. And 1 is going into a PD zone, which I can't find anywhere in the zoning. Do you know what a PD zone is? I'll find it here. It's on the first page, it's the 11th item. It's Old River Road 8619, parenthesis park. It's going from a B4 to a PD.
Public district.
And what's a, I didn't find that in our code, so what's a public district defined as? Do we have that in our zoning code?
Yes, actually, if you notice, when you look at the map, the gray areas are actually the public district.
And what do they consist of? I mean, is there zoning on it? Is height, or is it just that it's owned by the public?
They're all, yeah, the properties that are for the borough.
By the borough, okay. Then my question to you is,